Hi and welcome to 2016, and it started off with quite a bang. There's a lot of people that are really excited about where this year is going, and there are a lot of people that are very apprehensive about where this year is going. I think there are a lot of challenges that are starting to present themselves, and for a lot of people the writing's on the wall. We're heading for some really tough times in a lot of ways. But with all of that, I think that what's started to happen is most people have started to get so overwhelmed and consumed with this fear that they've forgotten one very powerful principle. And you see, if you look all around you, where's the fear being perpetuated? The fear is being perpetuated by the media, by the politicians, by the economists. And I'm not to say it's unfounded. I'm not to say that what we're hearing there's not at least an element of truth in it. Absolutely. But always stop and remember that it's not the whole truth. And that there's a whole other side to the story. There's always three sides, or even two sides to the story. And no matter how thin you slice it, there's always two sides. There's the positive side and there's the negative side. And so when we talk about the power of the mind and how important it is to be conscious of what thoughts you're putting into your mind. How are you thinking? What's the quality of your thoughts on a consistent basis? Because the conscious mind is always thinking thoughts, and it can only think one thought at a time. Which means that at any given point in time, it's either thinking a positive thought or it's thinking a negative thought. Whatever thoughts you think consistently, just process down and get embedded into the subconscious mind. And that's really where the traction starts to happen. So if your thoughts are predominantly around negative, the negative side of things, then that's what you're starting to plant in your subconscious mind. A couple of key points to remember is that it's really important to take stock of what are you exposing yourself to? How much of the paper, the newspapers, the TV, what are the things you're reading? What are you exposing your thoughts and your conscious mind to? Because remember, because the conscious mind can only think one thought at a time, it's either thinking a positive thought or a negative thought. And if we don't take responsibility to feed that conscious mind, it'll feed itself and it'll feed from our environment. And most of our environment is negative. Take time to start thinking about what can you do to start putting yourself in more positive environments. What can you do to start putting the right thoughts in? Watch the right movies, read the right books, associate with the right people. And then there's one final thing that's really come through strongly for me this year, and that is moving from fear to faith. Now, faith, most people associate with religion, and it's not about religion. Faith is really about trusting that what you've put out there will come back to you. It's really about trusting that things will work out. No matter what happens, things will work out. And so it's really important to think the thoughts of what it is that you want. And it's as important to let go and trust. You see, faith is really about taking that step back and saying, all right, it's going to happen. When we're pushing all the time, when we're constantly wanting and focusing on what we want and what we desire, and we don't allow the space for the things that we've created in our mind to actually come back to us. We don't give that space. And so if we're not taking the foot off the brake sometimes and letting go and just allowing things to come to us instead of chasing all the time, if we're not doing that, then we are really coming from a place of fear. And the shift that we need to make this year is to realize that life was never meant to be certain. And yet within that uncertainty is the certainty. Is that no matter what happens to you, good or bad, everything works out. And whatever you put out there comes back to you. And more good stuff comes back, the more you can take your foot off the brake and say, okay, let me give this space to come back. That doesn't mean sit back and do nothing. It means, yes, by all means, push. But as soon as you feel resistance, take the foot off. Take the foot off. And it's a subtle thing to pick up, and it's a subtle thing to sense. But you know in here when you're pushing too much. You know in here, you can feel it. And when you feel I'm pushing too much, take the foot off the brake and let whatever you want and whatever you've created in your mind come back to you. I wish you all the very best this year. And just remember, no matter what happens this year, faith is what moves you out of fear, because the fear perpetuates the negative.